All right, how's everybody doing today? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Hey, we're doing a live online broadcast, live free preview of our presentation, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, now I need to check my audio here quickly because this is acting up here on me. Just checking this here. All right. So those watching on Crowdcast, can you hear me? Can you hear me all right? Those watching on Crowdcast. And then those watching on Facebook Live, want to know if you can hear me also. I want to test my audio quickly here. Trying to test my audio. So what we're going to do today, we're going to do a free 1 hour preview of our 8-hour course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, and this is a 4-week course, online course that I teach. We have a slide presentation, we have video clips, book references, all different types of things like this. Okay, and the course is the full course is recorded, so you can go back and watch it over and over and over again also. Okay, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All right, so those here on Crowdcast, I want to know, can you hear me? I'm posting a message here. So I'm trying to get a response here. Can you hear me? Testing the audio. Okay, those watching on Crowdcast. All right, so we're going to jump into this. Hey, today is Saturday, April 22nd, 2017. Saturday, April 22nd, 2017. And we are live. We should be broadcasting on Facebook Live. I'm waiting for that broadcast on Facebook Live to start also here. Okay. All right, I'm trying to fix this audio here. Okay, so when I deal with the transatlantic slave trade, I don't deal with it as an episode in history. Okay, we don't deal with it episodically. We deal with it chronologically. Okay, and this is extremely important. We have to understand it as a sequence of historical events that take place, and you have a sequence of historical events that lead up to a larger event taking place. Okay, and this is what we're dealing with the transatlantic slave trade. So we deal with everything from Christopher Columbus and the impact Columbus had on the slave trade. We deal with the Africans known as the Moors, their 800-year occupation in Europe. Okay, we deal with all of that. All right. Okay. All right. Somebody finally responded. Okay. All right. So I'm trying to figure out why it's not broadcasting on Facebook. So we deal with all of that. Okay. And you have to understand it. You have to understand the sequence of historical events that oftentimes when people deal with the transatlantic slave trade, oftentimes those the sequence of historical events are not talked about. We also deal with the fact that African people are indigenous to North, Central, and South America, and we've been here at least 51,700 years, okay? And there's overwhelming evidence that deals with that. We deal with that in the course also. There's overwhelming evidence that deals with the African presence. You have the Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet, and they were in this land that we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. Okay. And they come from Southern Africa. They're the ancestors of the Ainu and the Twa. And there's overwhelming evidence. So we deal with thousands of years of history. We deal with ancient Kemet. We deal with the Moors. All of this history. Okay, it's a fascinating history, and we have to understand this chronologically to better understand the transatlantic slave trade, what happened, and what was taken away from us as well. So I'm going to go into I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint presentation here in just a minute. I'm just trying to see what's going on. We should be broadcasting live on Facebook, and it's not broadcasting. So I'm trying to see what's wrong with that. So just give me a minute here. Okay, so how's everybody doing today? Today is Saturday, April 22nd. 2017. Hey, I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, owner of the African History Network Facebook fan page, where we have 973,000 followers on our fan page. And this is a free 1 hour preview of our course, 8-hour course, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All right, so just give me a minute here because we're having problems connecting to Facebook here. Okay, so one of the things that we deal with in the course is the problem with the slave movies, the problem with the slave movies, right? And I'm going to bring up the presentation here in just a minute. So 2013 was known as the year of the slave-themed films, the year of the slave-themed films. And you had seven slave-themed films in 2013. And then now you have a slave-based TV show, Underground. Okay, now, yes, slavery is part of our history. But when they deal with these things, they have these movies, they have these TV shows, etc. They leave out thousands of years of history that precedes that, and the fact that African people were here in this land before Native Americans came into existence. Okay, we were here before Native Americans came into existence, and this history is totally left out. Okay, so this history is totally left out, which is problematic because it further reinforces what I call the 1619 myth, the myth that our history started in this country August 20th, 1619. Okay, the myth that our history in this country started August 20th, 1619. All right. And even though August 20th, 1619 did happen, even though that did happen, is not exactly the way we've been taught that it happened, number one. And number two, we can't start our history in this country shackled in chains and conquered by Europeans, okay? Because that's just psychologically damaging to our people and to our children, okay? So these are things that we deal with, and these are things that we counter and fight against in our 8-hour online course, Understanding the Transatlantic, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, okay? These are things that we deal with and fight against, all right? And we also have to understand that the number one way that European white supremacist images are fed to our children is through the television. It's through the television. You call it a TV, you call it a TV, I call it the television, because it's a vision that tells lies, okay, the television. In 2011, Nielsen did a study, AC Nielsen, okay, that do surveys to conduct the TV ratings, things like this, and this is what TV stations use usually to base their advertising rates upon. Okay, well, Nielsen did a study in 2011, and they found that African Americans 18 to 54 years old watched African Americans 18 to 49, I should say, watched 7.2 hours of TV a day, 7.2 hours of the television a day. Okay, so that is 50 hours a week. That is a full-time job plus 10 hours of overtime that you don't get paid to do. Okay, so we have to really understand it. We have to understand it in those terms. Okay, and to understand how we are oftentimes being brainwashed by the images that we see. Okay, all right, guys. Those who are on Crowdcast, hey, do me a favor, just post a message so I can see who we have on. All right, how's everybody doing today? We'll be here for about an hour or so, and I'm trying to fix this technical glitch because we're supposed to be on Facebook Live, and it's not broadcasting. There was some type of glitch when I was setting this up for Facebook Live. It worked perfectly well last night. It worked perfectly well last night when I did a broadcast, but this morning it's just acting up. So I'm gonna try to see if I can. I'm trying to fix this right now and see if I can. Let me see something here. See if we can pick this up in progress. Just 1 second here, guys and ladies. Okay, we'll see if that works. Trying to fix this. Okay, so these are things that we deal with in the course. You know, Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters, said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Okay, and to fight against white supremacy, we have to take our minds back, and we do that by reclaiming African history and culture. Reclaiming African history and culture. It's our history and culture that give us our VIPs, our values, our interests, and our principles. Our values, our interests, and our principles. Okay, so we take that back by take our minds back by reclaiming our history and our culture. Okay, it's extremely important. All right, let me go ahead. Let's see who we have on here. Everybody. Okay. And we're going to have more people join us also. I just sent out the email blast. Let me go ahead and let's see. We should be on Facebook at 1:27 p.m. I just set that up. Had to fix something, so we should be on 1:27 p.m. on Facebook. Okay. Let me go ahead and bring up the slide presentation, my actual presentation here. All right. Just 1 second here. Okay, here we go. So you should all be able to see this here. All right. So, you know, Dr. John Henrik Clarke was one of our great Grandmaster Scholar warriors, wrote numerous books, was a researcher. He's also in the documentary Make It Plain. about Malcolm X. He was good friends with Malcolm X. Okay, check out that documentary, Make It Plain. They also have it on YouTube. Most of the documentaries about Malcolm X I've seen, all of them, just like the documentaries about Muhammad Ali. I've seen most of those as well. You can look behind me and see the pictures of Malcolm and Muhammad Ali. Those are two of my heroes. But Dr. John Henrik Clarke said, all history is a current event. Everything that's ever happened continues to happen in some shape, form, or fashion. All history is a current event. Everything that's ever happened continues to happen in some shape, form, or fashion. And what we do is we lay a historical foundation in the class in the beginning. And the session here is actually going to go 5 sessions. We have the next session starting up this Thursday, April 27th. Okay, so you can register for that. And as soon as you register, you can watch the first 4 hours of the course that we're recording. Now, a lot of people ask, how do you pronounce your last name? And I get this all the time. It surprises me because Imhotep is one of the greatest people in human history. And we know a lot of people who we are told are historical figures that didn't historically exist, but we don't know about Imhotep. All right, so Imhotep means he who comes in peace in the ancient Middle Nether language, the ancient language by the ancient Kemetic people or ancient Egyptians, okay? And he was a high priest, a physician, an architect, a mathematician. He was the designer of the step pyramid at Saqqara from the Subiti-Zoser or Pharaoh Zoser in the 3rd dynasty. He was known as the world's first multi-genius. Now, depending upon which timeline of history that you use, you'll see him living anywhere from 2700 BC to 3000 BC. Because we know at least 300,000 years of our history has been stolen. Because we know at least 300,000 years of our history has been stolen. I go with the oldest dates I can find. So it's about 3000 BC, okay? Now, this is Imhotep. This is not Imhotep, okay? Now, in the 2001 blockbuster movie, which was called The Mummy Returns, it was a sequel to the movie The Mummy. The villain's name was Imhotep, okay? And they got this Eurasian Arab-looking actor named Arnold Vosloo. And in the movie, he was a high priest from ancient Egypt, okay? So consequently, many of our children think that one of our greatest ancestors was evil and not of African descent. But this also demonizes ancient Egypt as well. It demonizes ancient Egypt and causes many of our people not to want to learn about it because we see it demonized. We see ancient Egypt demonized in religious literature oftentimes. And we see it here in this blockbuster movie, ancient Egypt demonized as well, okay? And then we see movies like Rupert Murdoch's movie from 21st Century Fox, I think it was 21st Century Fox or 20th Century Fox, Exodus, Gods and Kings, okay, which showed the deities and the rulers of ancient Egypt as Europeans, and it showed a lot of the servants as dark-skinned Black African people. Just a total distortion. And Rupert Murdoch, who owns the Fox News network that just fired Bill O'Reilly, he also owns the Fox TV network, where the TV show Empire is shown, which is one of the most degrading shows to African Americans that's on right now. Rupert Murdoch was asked about the depiction of the ancient Egyptians in this film, right? And he said, since when are Egyptians not white? He said, all the Egyptians I know are white. See, this guy's a billionaire, okay? This is the thinking of a lot of these people. This is the thinking of a lot of these people, okay? So we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to understand who we're supporting. I'm so glad that Bill O'Reilly's off the air. Now, there are other white supremacist bigots to take his place, like Tucker Carlson and some of these other ones, but this put Fox News on notice because you have over 80 companies that pulled advertising from Fox News, and they didn't pull it out of the kindness of their own heart. A lot of times they got pressure from various organizations. One of those organizations was colorofchange.org. which is co-founded by African Americans. Colorchange.org. They're doing a lot of good work. Executive Director Rashad Robinson was on News One Now with Roland Martin this past week dealing with this. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow night on my show on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation. I'm on 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. We broadcast on Facebook Live as well. Go to our Facebook fan page. Go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have information there about that. Okay. Now here is a picture of the Step Pyramid at Saqqara that Imhotep was the designer of. Okay. And this is one of the early pyramids. It's called a mastaba, a flat bench pyramid. It's called a mastaba. Okay, one of the early pyramids. Pyramid building technology is going to evolve over hundreds of years. Okay, so the pyramids you see at Giza, the pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, those pyramids are styled differently than other ones. Okay, than the earlier ones. All right. Okay, hey Greg, how you doing? Yeah, class today is going to be from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. because I have a 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. class, Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Okay, and then we deal with dating systems and understanding dating systems because these are tools that you need to really understand the information we're going to get into. So the dating system of BC and AD was formulated by an English monk known as the Venerable Bede. He's later going to be canonized as a saint. This was in 8th century AD. Okay, so AD means Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord. AD does not mean after death. I hear some people saying AD means after death, but AD does not mean after death. Okay, AD Anno Domini means in the year of our Lord. Now, BC means before Christ. BC dates count down. AD dates count up. BC dates count down. AD dates count up. Okay, and you're going to have some scholars like Tony Browder in Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, and the others like Maleficenti Asante. There's an attempt to move away from the BC AD dating systems. So you may see BCE before the Common Era, and you may see ACE after the Common Era. Okay, there's an attempt to move away from that dating system. Give me a minute here. Let me check something on because I think we're about to go live on Facebook Live, so I need to check this. I'm trying to make sure this is correct. So doing a countdown here. Just give me 1 minute here. I'm trying to make sure this works. Why isn't this working? Hold on. Okay. Okay, just give me 1 minute here. I'm trying to see something here. Get the live. Manual start. Okay. Can I just start manually and go live? Just give me a minute, guys. Here, I'm trying to get this going. Technology is not working the way it's supposed to. All right, I'll be back in just a second here. Okay, I have to figure that out later. All right, so um, let's go back to this here. All right, so you have an attempt to get away from AD and BC dating systems, okay? Now, some of the things we deal with in the course are understanding, when we deal with understanding transatlantic slave trade, not just a sequence of historical events leading up to the slave trade happening. We also deal with exactly what was the transatlantic slave trade, what were some of the events that led up to it taking place. Um, what role did Christopher Columbus play in the transatlantic slave trade? Very, very important role, because Columbus helps lay the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, the exploitation of indigenous people. Um, he he opens up the so-called New World to other European powers coming in and fighting over this new world, the riches that were there, the human capital as well. And you're going to have these European nations fighting each other for hundreds of years. You're going to have them fighting each other for hundreds of years. And this is eventually going to lead up to the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885 taking place, the Berlin Conference, okay? And at the Berlin Conference, these European nations, is called by Otto von Bismarck of Germany, these European nations are going to carve up Africa into colonies, okay? And they're going to set they're going to set these geographical boundaries, which are going to become the new boundaries for these countries for the most part. And they're going to set the geographical boundaries around the areas that have the different types of natural resources that the respective countries want. So the majority of the boundaries that exist in Africa today, the basically 55 countries in Africa, the majority of those boundaries come out of that Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885. Okay, we'll deal with so Columbus is crucial. You have to deal with Christopher Columbus. We also deal with the 800-year occupation of Africa by the Africans known as the Moors, who are going to who bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. They introduce all different types of mathematics and science, chemistry, what they call alchemy, introduce chemistry. They're going to introduce spherical globes and almanacs and different types of nautical instruments, reintroduce the concept of longitude and latitude, things like this, and bring Europe out of the Dark Ages, okay? We'll do it. When did Africans first come to the U.S. as slaves? When did Africans first come to the U.S. as slaves? Did Africans sell themselves into slavery also? We'll deal with all these different topics, and we'll refute the argument made by Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr., because Gates asserts that Africans had equal culpability in the transatlantic slave trade, if not more so, than Europeans. But Gates is an apologist for Europeans. Now, he does do some good work. I read some of his articles. I actually read a lot of his articles, and I share some of his articles in my presentations as well. But Gates is an apologist for Europeans, okay? He's an apologist for Europeans. And his goal is to absolve Europeans of any responsibility for paying reparations. And this is why he's financed by European corporations also. So we deal with this in the course also. Now, this is Runoko Rashidi. I've interviewed Runoko 6 times. He's a world traveler, historian, author. He's in the documentary Hidden Colors 2, The Triumph of Melanin. And Runoko has a saying that I've modified and made my own. What you do for yourself. Now, this explains why studying African history is so important. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you have been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Okay, so this is why studying African history is so important. It gives you your foundation. Marcus Garvey, who founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association in 1914, said if the Negro is not careful, he would drink in all the poison of modern civilization and die from the effects of it. If the Negro is not careful, he would drink in all the poison of modern civilization and die from the effects of it. Okay. And Dr. Wade Noble is one of our great African-centered psychologists. He talks about how power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. Power coming from the Latin word potere, meaning to be able. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Lily Fuller, they taught us to understand white supremacy and racism as a global system. They taught us if you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. Everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you, okay? And this is Dr. Wilson's famous book, The ISIS Papers, Keys to the Colors. She made a transition January 2nd, 2016, January 2nd, 2016. That was a big loss. Now, everybody knows Malcolm's one of my heroes, and Malcolm taught us about the power of the media. And I've been studying media for 25 years. My degree is in business administration with a major in marketing. So I've been studying history and African history and culture, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, media, et cetera, for 25 years. But he said the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses, Okay. And Malcolm asked a series of questions dealing with who are you and what were you before the white man named you a Negro? Where's your history? Where's your culture? What were your names, etc.? Okay, what happened to this? Okay, what method was used to wipe this information away from our minds? And these are some of the questions that we answer in the course. We deal with a real life historical example of the suppression of the knowledge, which deals with the fight against between the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Christian Church, and the Druids, the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Druids, okay? And Druid means he who knows, is Old Irish, it means he who knows. So we deal with this real historical fight that took place in 432 AD. And because the truth and the lie can't coexist in the same space. The truth has to be suppressed for the lie to grow and to prosper. So we deal with understanding this history here. So in the first session and a half, we lay a good historical foundation and deal with some recent archaeological discoveries, things like this, to expand the circumference of our own awareness and to lay a good foundation so we can dig deeper into have a better foundation to understand the transatlantic slave trade as well. Now, I deal with Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And his book deals with evidence of an African presence going back at least 51,700 years in Allendale County, South Carolina. But it was discovered in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina. And they discovered artifacts, architecture, campsites, footprints in lava, Egyptian carvings, Egyptian writings, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with genetics, linguistics, painting, skulls, skeleton structures, and tools. 13 different disciplines thoroughly documenting an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. There was an article from ScienceDaily.com in 2004 that talked about Dr. Albert Goodyear's discovery and dealt with the evidence of man in North America 50,000 years ago, okay? So we were in South America going back at least 56,000 years ago, and we were in North America, in the land, specifically the land we call the United States, going back at least 51,700 years ago. We were here before Native Americans came into existence in this land. This was our land taken away from us. And you're going to have Asians that come here around 3000 BC, and the Asians and Africans are going to intermix and are offspring of who we call Native Americans. Okay, there's an article from New York Times February 15, 2010, on Crete, new evidence of very ancient mariners. On Crete, new evidence of very ancient mariners. This deals with an African presence in the Greek island of Crete going back at least 130,000 years ago, based upon numerous stone tools that were found that date back 130,000 years ago. They excavated this over the course of 2 summers. Okay, so see, the more research they do, the blacker the planet gets. The more and the deeper they dig, the older we get. Okay, and the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets. The more research they do, the older we get. They keep having to push back dates. They just discovered a pyramid from the 13th dynasty that's about I think 3,700 years old. Discovery.com had the Discovery Channel's website, which now is Seeker.com. I was just reading an article about that last night. They just discovered a pyramid. The article came out earlier this month. It was like April 4th. They just discovered a pyramid from the 13th dynasty that dates back about 3,700 years ago. And then they just also discovered a few days ago, CNN had an article. They just discovered a Egyptian mummies that date back 3,500 years ago. So all these discoveries are constantly happening, okay, which causes people to have to push dates back. All right, so we also deal with, this is something that's really, really fascinating here. The lost city of Egypt called Tanis Heraklion, okay? This was actually discovered back around the year 2000, these discoveries, but they were excavating all this stuff, cataloging it, researching it, so it became revealed in 2013. News.yahoo.com had this article, Sunken Egyptian City Reveals 1,200-year-old Secrets. Sunken Egyptian City Reveals 1,200-year-old Secrets, okay? So let me fast forward quickly here. We're going to wrap up here in a couple minutes. So I deal with, in of course, how we are at war. We've been at war for at least 500 years. War going back to at least 1492. And we see a rise of white supremacy coming out of the Dark Ages also, where Europe is circumnavigating the globe and they're conquering people's lands, and they realize that the majority of the people in the world don't look like them. And as they extract wealth from people's lands and rebuild Europe, they start pushing a European phenotype as the dominant phenotype, pushing European culture as the dominant culture as well, and co-opting previous images of African people that they have been worshiping, like the Black Madonna and Child, which comes from Osset and Heru, the First Holy Trinity, the story of Asar, Osset, and Heru, the First Holy Trinity. So we see the war continue with the 13th Amendment, and the 13th Amendment being used to re-enslave some African people with the sharecropping system, first with the black codes and then the sharecropping system and the convict leasing system. We see the war on drugs escalate. We see the war on drugs declared June 17, 1971 by Richard Nixon. We see it escalate in 1982 with Ronald Reagan's war on drugs. We see it escalate in 1994 with the crime bill, but even before the crime bill, because states had already started passing longer, harsher sentences in the late 80s and early 90s. This is something that a lot of people don't understand when they deal with the 1994 crime bill. That wasn't signed on September 13th, 1994. And that dealt with federal law. 87% of the people who went to prison under 2 terms of Bill Clinton, went under state law. That crime bill was federal law, okay? So you have to understand what happened before that crime bill. And Dr. Edward Robinson talks about how we should look at our African ancestors as prisoners of war, because there were wars going on that they were caught up with. He said they weren't slaves. They were enslaved, but they weren't slaves. He said, but they were prisoners of war. When we look at them as prisoners of war and we study history, we see that the war never ended, okay? Now, we deal a lot with the Africans known as the Moors. This is a significant piece of history, and the tensions that build up between Moors and Europeans, and the quest to reclaim Europe from the Africans. They first go into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, in 711 AD. And they're going to go into France, they go into Sicily and Crete, and Prague, Czechoslovakia, Austria, Germany, England, and go all throughout Europe. Okay. And they're coming from North Africa and Northwest Africa. So we deal with this a lot. And they're taking into Europe teachings coming from the ancient Egyptian mystery systems, coming from ancient Kemet. And those teachings are going to come back. They're going to come to the U.S. brought by Europeans in the forms of Freemasonry. And we know that 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. This is why you have symbols of Africa and Freemasonry on the $1 bill. The Tekken, the obelisk or the Washington Monument is an African symbol. It deals with the concept of resurrection coming from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru. Okay, and the Greeks called them Isis, Osiris, and Horus. Here is a popular statue of Heru or Horus, the sun, Asar in the middle, who the Greeks called Osiris, and Aset, his wife, who the Greeks called Isis. Okay, so we deal with Freemasonry and understanding that because this ties into ancient Kemet as well. And we know from Aset, Heru, you get the Black Madonna and Child, and then you get a decolorized version of that as white supremacy becomes dominant. Okay. All right. So we deal with also laying the foundation, the origins of the word America, and this fascinating story, and how not only are African people indigenous to this land, but even the term America originally did not refer to Europeans. Now, Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters, he said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressed is the mind of the oppressed. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressed is the mind of the oppressed. So we have to take our minds back for white supremacy to really work. Now, white supremacy is a false concept that has real consequences and repercussions. But for it to really work, we have to believe it, buy into it, and believe that Europeans are superior. So the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. We have to take our mind back. So I deal with the problems with slave movies and deal with this extensively as well, how they lock us into a slave mentality in the 1619 myth. This is the national flags, of course, are in Sardinia. They have African Moors heads on their national flags because the Moors were in those areas and it was a monumental effort to defeat them. So we deal with the etymology of the word Moor, things like this. We deal with Christopher Columbus, where Columbus went on his 4 voyages also, because Columbus never came to the land we call the United States of America. And we do with the Bartholomew de las Casas also. Now, at least 70% of the people that Columbus encountered on his 4 voyages were African people. All right, I'm dealing with allergies, so I'm drinking some tea. So my throat is all right. At least 70% of Columbus encountered on his 4 voyages were African people also. Okay, important to understand. So we deal with some of the origins of racism and white supremacy. We reference post-traumatic slave syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy. Also, we deal with a historical example here of Hannibal Barca. And we're laying a foundation to better understand the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, excellent. This was from the History Channel, Barbarians Rising, which was a series that looked at the fall of the Roman Empire over a course of invasions by barbarians in different groups over 700 years. Okay. And I deal with the rise of white supremacy because after Europeans become dominant, after the rise of white supremacy, then images, depictions of Hannibal are not of him as an African person, but as a European. He gets co-opted. Okay. So we deal with the Middle Passage. What the Middle Passage was, we deal with things like the slave trading companies, etc., that were financed by Europeans. We deal with the insurance companies that were involved in the slave trade also. These are all owned by Europeans, okay? Then this is something very interesting, the father of modern gynecology, J. Marion Sims. We deal with the power of the media, how the power of the media transformed a butcher who did experiments on enslaved Africans, especially enslaved African women, how he gets transformed into this gentle, a brilliant doctor who becomes the father of modern gynecology. This guy was a butcher, okay? So we deal with a ton of information in the course. And then we also deal with this topic here, of Africans owning other Africans here in the U.S., because it's not, the actual story is not the way it's depicted. Europeans will say, well, black people own black people here in this country as well. First of all, we only own about 1% of the slaves, and a large percentage of those were family members who we bought out of slavery. So I go into that in depth in the course also. Okay. All right. So there's a lot of information that we deal with here in the course, and we go throughout history, and we do 1,000 years of history, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so if you haven't registered for this course, we have the course that meets on Thursday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Meets this Thursday and meets 2 more Thursdays. You can register for that, and the full, let me see, you can register for that, and once you register for that, you'll be able to watch the first 4 hours of the session that we've done so far. Okay, we posted the link there, so check that out. Hey, we have a course today, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. I gotta get ready for that. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. So it's only $20. That is 6 hours, a 3-week course, 3 consecutive Saturdays, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. I'm going to post the information for that. You can register for that course also. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. And let's see here. Okay, here we go. Here's the link for that. And we deal with some well-known and not so well-known African women in our history. Great African Women in History, Mothers of Civilization. That's excellent. That's excellent. This is going to blow people away. One of the women we talk about is Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta Lacks. Oprah has her movie tonight, 8 p.m. on what is that? HBO, about Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta Lacks and her immortal selves. Henrietta Lacks and her immortal selves. So we're going to deal with that. We're going to deal with that today. Okay. Henrietta Lacks and her immortal selves. Okay. Hey, look, we got to get out of here. Talk to you next time. Go ahead and register for the course if you haven't done it already. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.